Welcome to A Taste of AZ podcast, where we interview everyone from James Beard award-winning chefs to local mixologists, winemakers, breweries, and so much more. We've got an awesome episode lined up for you today. But before we get into that, head to atasteofaz.com so you can subscribe to our quarterly magazine and email newsletter to find all of the best places to eat and drink around town. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Now let's get into the episode. Well, hello, A Taste of AZ listeners. Today is a wonderful episode we've got lined up with you with a veteran of the Arizona food scene, a legend of the Arizona food scene, a lot of other monikers, but I'll have our guest go ahead and introduce himself and where we are.
My name's Chef Matt Carter. We're at Zinc Bistro in Scottsdale, Arizona, up in Carolyn Commons.
And I figure anyone who loves food in Arizona knows of you and knows of your history and your pedigree. But for those who don't, give kind of the brief summary of your existing concepts.
So my first restaurant that opened was Zinc Bistro here 23 years ago. We signed the lease here in 2001, probably January or February, and we were supposed to open in October, November of 2001, and 9/11 happened, and we lost pretty much half of our investors. So it got pushed back, and we eventually opened on January 10th, 2002. So this was my first baby. Kind of always a dream to have a French bistro in Arizona, kind of bring my travels abroad and in France and kind of bring that home. And my business partner and I were on the same page, really wanted to do that. Found this space. Everybody in town told us we were crazy because at the time this was North Scottsdale, right? There was not a lot up here. The Westin wasn't built yet. The Scottsdale Quarter was still the old Dial Corporation, which had been empty for 15 years. Yeah. So it just looked like kind of a dead zone up here. It's interesting. Just over the last 3 months, I've met 3 different people, and I won't name who they are, but that came to me and said, I originally had the lease on that space, but it was too big or it was too small or it was too far north. And I'm like, well, I'm glad I was able to take that from you because it's become obviously home to me and to my staff and team and to the people that, are our guests and diners that frequent us quite often.
Yeah.
It's interesting for me. It feels very full circle just of my life in general, being here interviewing you at this restaurant. Because when I was a kid, let's say I was 12, 13 years old walking around, and I would always walk past Zinc Bistro and I'm like, French food. I had no understanding of what French food was. I just thought this was a restaurant for wealthy individuals, and maybe to some extent that remains true. But it's funny being here, and after walking past the patio that you have right here hundreds of times probably. So right. That's a personal level of excitement for me, I suppose. But yeah, talk to us a bit about your other concepts.
So after we opened Zinc, probably about, I'd say 4 or 5 years later, both my partner and I kind of had an itch to do something else. And we had a few concepts on our mind. And one was kind of hatched out of kind of an accident of me roasting whole pigs because I just was always a kind of a pork fan. And so I got a cajachina and I started roasting pigs, and I always served it with tortillas. I did it at everybody's homes, right? Like it's your birthday party, I'm going to come over and roast a pig. You're getting married, I'm going to come roast a pig. So
not a pork shoulder, not a pork leg,
whole pigs,
a whole pig,
whole pigs. Like and if you've ever used a cajachina, it's maybe not the number one way to cook a pig, but it's pretty darn close if you know what you're doing.
What exactly is that?
So it's a wooden box that's got a metal liner on it, and you kind of splay the pig out flat, and then put it in a cage and put him inside, and then the coals go on top. So it's an indirect cooking method, kind of close to like roasting it in the ground, like you'd see, in Hawaii or in Texas or even the Carolinas, kind of the old way. You'd bury it underground and put the coals on top. This is just a box that you can reuse over and over and over again. Yeah. But the effects come out really, really close. And what happens is you cook it belly side up for about 6 hours, and then you flip it and cook it for another 2 hours, skin side up, and the skin just gets super, super crispy. I mean, the best bite is the back of the neck. Take that little crispy chicharron and then scoop some of the cheek. That's like the first bite. Only a few people get that one, right? Save that for the bride. Yeah. But it is a very special technique. And from that kind of evolved the mission. And that there's all kinds of stories of how that evolved from us bringing on a third partner, which is still my partner, Brian Robb, and finding a location, already naming it the Mission, but our location that we found just happened to be next to the oldest mission church in Old Town Scottsdale.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like, okay, this feels right, And in the beginning, it was supposed to be, tacos, tequila, tortillas, and beer and pig. And it evolved from there. And it evolved from kind of my desire to scratch the itch of cooking other foods from Latin America, even Southern Mexico, that I didn't think was necessarily present here in town at the time. I loved going to Mexico City and having street tacos, like the really small kind of one, two bite, tacos. Yeah. And I just didn't see that here. And I didn't see anybody doing handmade tortillas. So I really wanted to do that. And the evolution of the restaurant just kind of took off. And it really was as they designed the restaurant and it got a little more fancy than pork tacos, beers, tequila, and pig. So did my menu. So we opened Mission about 16 years ago in Old Town. And quasi similar story with Fat Ox, just had an itch to make pasta for many years. And, here at Zinc, I can only serve so much pasta. We always had a pasta program on the menu, but nothing that was as expansive and as elevated as I wanted to. So when the opportunity came to partner with Mark Drinkwater and Brian and I, we looked for a great space. At the time, we weren't sure if it was going to be Italian or if it was going to be more of a steakhouse, because that's Drinkwater's background with Mastro's and City Hall. He was partners with those guys and, was kind of a bar guy too. He had, was involved in a lot of the bars back in Scottsdale in the late 80s, all through the 90s. Planet Earth and Jets and Sticks. And, so he and Brian kind of had that bar side and I wanted to do Italian. I wanted to make pasta, obviously. When we found the location on Lincoln and Scottsdale Road, being an old space, meaning that was a restaurant that I went to as a child. If you grew up anywhere in Scottsdale or Paradise Valley, through that time period in the 70s and 80s, the Quilted Bear was my grandparents took me there, right? Yeah. It was an older restaurant, but and I loved it, but it was also kind of like a bunch of older people there when I was a kid. So it was great for Easter and things like that. Yeah. But it was a legendary space and they'd been open. I think they were there for 30 plus years. So being able to take over kind of a legacy space like that and then to put my pasta dreams to action there was it just perfect, right? I mean, everything I ever wanted about it. So it was fantastic. And then we opened about 6 months after we opened Fat Ox. It's about 8 years ago. We opened Mission Kierland right next to Zinc Bistro here in Kierland Commons.
That was 8 years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't seem like...
No, absolutely.
It goes fast.
I feel like Fat Ox just opened kind of in my mind.
Because of how much this area, this Kierland Scottsdale corridor area has changed since my youth, like you were saying, when, across the street was nothing like it is now. And now it's one of the biggest destination shopping areas in Scottsdale, I guess, outside of Old Town. Maybe it competes with it. I don't know. It's really interesting to see how much it's changed. And it's also probably got to be pretty surreal for you being so embedded here. It's almost like watching a kid grow up, isn't it?
100%. And even with my own children, I was joking with my oldest son the other day. He's 34. And we have pictures of us standing behind a chain link fence when this was still dirt. Wow. Just as we were signing the lease and before anything was built here. And, he's just reminiscing about his memories. So, having other people around that were here during that time and watching it evolve. And Zinc has that kind of thing of evolution that is constantly changing, but also always kind of in our face. And I say that because we have generational staff members here. I have children of parents that worked here when we first opened who have since retired, and now they're not only some of my leaders but also some of my managers here in the building. That's cool. So there's this constant history and evolution inside the building. And even when I'm outside of Zinc, I was at Fat Ox the other night and there were some patrons that used to live here close and now they've moved further south. So they were there and they were all reminiscing about nights that they've had here at Zinc and Christmas stories and stories of my partner, who was a fairly legendary guy. He passed a few years ago, but he's still in the conversation nonstop. He had that big of an effect on the town and the city, and it's pretty cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, I don't think it's an exaggeration at all to consider Zinc kind of the linchpin, or maybe the cornerstone is a better word, of the food in Kierland. I think for sure that's something that, because you've been around for as long as you have, and then on top of that, doing things at the level that you have, I don't know that you can make an argument for anyone else in here being like that. And I think that's something that the time that you've been around, you obviously can't manufacture that besides just showing up 23 years ago. And
correct. Right. And being at the right time, at the right place. I had known my partner, Terry, several years prior. He owned the Merc Bar on 24th Street in Camelback. He was partners there. And we were friends, but never discussed opening a restaurant. And I happened to be working at Michael's at the Citadel off Pinnacle Peak and Pima at the time. And he had approached Brandon and Michael about opening a restaurant and wanted them to consult because he hadn't run a restaurant before. He'd only run bars. And they were like, well, the first thing you need is a chef. And we've got a guy right here. Happens to be maybe on his way out fairly soon looking for something. And so it just worked out perfectly. And it is one of those things that we still kind of pinch ourselves and at how lucky we've been and fortunate. And you're right. Some of it's showing up, right? Just being in the right place at the right time. Some of it's hard work and perseverance. I mean, we opened during 9/11. We survived 2008. We survived COVID. Yeah. And a lot of that was my partner Terry. Like he was always had a lot of forethought, a lot of more of a savings driven person. Meaning like we didn't spend our money, we saved it and used that to open our next restaurants as well.
Smart. Yeah.
That we've always tried to keep it as internal as possible. So it's all on us, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. But if it's all on you, then you can pivot a little easier than if you've got a group of people that are trying to make decisions, which is difficult, right?
Yeah. Sure.
It's a small team that we make decisions. We can adjust very quickly. And I think that part of that is why we were able to survive a lot of those kind of pivotal moments where restaurants really struggle during those times, right?
Yeah.
Thin margins, and usually you don't have a lot of cash on hand to survive things like that. So
things aren't great when things are great in the industry, right? So when they're bad,
exactly.
they're bad. Yeah,
exactly.
I want to dig into that a little bit more, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention as well before we continue on that Fat Ox, as you mentioned, one of your concepts, is featured in our most recent book publication, which is Arizona Must Visit Restaurants, Bars, and More. And I would certainly consider Fat Ox on that list, of course, because it's in the book. But then you are also in the most recent, at the time of recording, our most recent magazine doing a chef's picks. We got a new one that's about to roll out, our April issue. So
nice.
That'll probably be out by the time this releases. But yeah, I wanted to mention that. Thank you so much for giving us your recommendations and being involved in those projects. But
I got to check out Matt's recommendations. I see Hot Daisy on there, Dick's Hideaway, Christopher's.
Some very solid spots for sure. And I want to expand on those a little bit later in the episode. But, it's been kind of picking up my brain ever since you mentioned the whole opening right after 9/11 and kind of what a setback like that looks like. How did you deal with that when the time was coming? Because with a restaurant, there's so many factors at play. And if you play your cards wrong, there can be a lot of very, very cash intensive things that can eat up your time and your money. How do you deal with something like that?
Through all of those things, and it can bring it back just to even a normal service in a kitchen or in a restaurant, right? There's always curveballs. There's always things that happen. And we have a few mantras that we stick with. And one of those, there are no problems. There's only solutions, is a big one. And because if you dwell on problems, you don't come up with solutions and you just go stagnant, right?
Sure.
And also under pressure, sometimes diamonds get created out of that pressure.
Sure.
I'm sure a lot of my chefs and managers and staff members and partners don't necessarily love that part of me, but I am not necessarily somebody that would procrastinate on purpose, but I will allow things to come to a little bit of a pressure point because I do find that you find great solutions when you really have to. When you don't, you have luxury of time and money. I don't think it's the same. And not that I am trying to give myself a heart attack or anybody else that works for me, but they all know that I tend to let things kind of lead on a little bit longer maybe than normal just for those moments. And speaking specifically of 9/11 and that happening because of that, we had ordered a 25-foot zinc bar from France. Typically those zinc bars are poured into a mold and then we were shipping that over because nobody was pouring zinc bars here in the US at the time, and there may be now, but not that I know of. And that all got canceled. We couldn't get that. So we had a guy locally here. He came and took sheets of zinc and molded it around a mold that he made and created our bar that now is 100% unique. There's nobody else that has a zinc bar like that because out of need, we created something completely different. So at the time, it felt bad because we wanted this other thing that we had already paid for, right? And then that was a struggle to figure that out.
Yeah.
But then, and there, it was unique in of itself, but it would have been like every other Zinc bar in the country or in France. This is special, and it has lasted the test of time. That's one of the things about not only the Zinc bar or the aesthetic, the French bistro, the Parisian bistro, is the timeliness of it on the look. But as an example, these bistro chairs, these are the same chairs that I opened this restaurant with.
Wow.
At Fat Ox, for example, 8 years in, we've replaced those chairs at least twice.
Really? Wow.
Right. So this design, the aesthetic of it, it's classic, but it's also got like the staying power of there's a reason that it exists. There's a reason why people replicate or redo some of the same looks, the warmth you get from the globes, the oyster bar. You know, they may be ubiquitous and you see them a lot, but there's a reason for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're timeless classics, and if you can achieve that well with a great team and produce it and keep up with the times on your food and everything else, then they just become classics.
Well, especially not being in France, right? We're in Scottsdale, and in a way, Scottsdale is almost, in my opinion, notorious for like the box style look, or there's so much repetitiveness in trying to make everything look cohesive and work into the desert that a lot of the time, you know, you kind of miss that soul and the essence of, especially in the restaurant world where it's so driven by a concept. That's one of those things that always stuck out about this place, especially like the patio back there. It's very lush, very dense, not something you typically see in Scottsdale. And I remember walking around and seeing that and just being like, what is that place? It looks magical. It looks immersive. And I think this place definitely has an immersive touch to it.
There's, you know, restaurants, not all restaurants want or have the ability to be semi-theatrical.
Mm-hmm.
But that's was always our goal and has been the goal for all of our restaurants. That once you're in there, it's our job to take you out of whatever's going on, good or bad in your life, to sit down with friends and break bread, right? Friends, family, business associates, whatever it is, and to be able to kind of leave whatever's going on outside. And to do that, you do need a little theater. You know, we're not going to do dance shows in here and, you know, sparklers and stuff. This isn't Cirque du Soleil, but it is something that you can come in here and I'm not saying you're going to transport yourself to Paris, but sometimes if you're sitting on that front patio in beautiful weather and eating oysters and drinking a Sancerre, I mean, life's pretty good, right? I mean, you could definitely transport yourself. And that's always been our goal, is that there's a little theater in the restaurant business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the guy in the back. You know, I typically don't come out that often. I'm kind of a kitchen hound. I love being in kitchens. I love the chaos and the intensity and the smells and just the whole thing. I just love, and I've always loved, and I just fell in love with that first. Before I fell in love with food, I fell in love with kitchens and the environment and the camaraderie and the teamwork that goes into it. And that's what attracted me. And I fell in love with food later. And then food now is my driving thing, obviously. You know, it's all I do, live, breathe, read all day long. And I never, it's never ending. There's something I learn every week that you would think, you know, from a straight, you know, time given into this business level that I would have already known about. I'm constantly learning.
It's interesting to me because not only that kind of tenacity to learn more about food and beverage, but you also mentioned your mentality of letting things kind of come to a head a little bit so that it puts that extra pressure on. Those to me sound like something that would be part of a person with a competitive nature. And I think food and beverage is interesting because, you know, you're not necessarily competing against someone. You're just competing to survive and thrive. Do you look at it that way, as kind of like a competition with yourself, or are you just doing what you're doing?
I think it's a combination for sure. There's definitely a competitiveness to it. Most of it is personal, striving for goals, things like that. Not only internally within the space, but also what's the next step? What's the next piece? How do we evolve constantly? And some of that is self-generated, right? Just things that you see that tell you, hey, that's something that I need to move on. And that's part of the secret we're going to talk about here in a little bit.
Okay.
But it's also, again, reading something and going, wow, that's a really interesting take on that. How do I take a piece of that, kind of make that mine, and then that's the easy part. That's kind of the art part. Like I can scribble something. I could write you a whole menu on this piece of paper in 5 minutes, right? Now, does that menu make sense? Does it make sense for the kitchen? Does it make sense for the dining room? Can my kitchen pull that off? Is it cost effective? Does the menu vary? Does it have, something that's maybe a little less expensive? We want that different diner constantly within all of our buildings. We want you to have the ability to go sit by yourself at the bar and have an omelet here and a Pilsner or Kel and be done. And then come back the next day with your wife and have a 3-hour extravaganza with foie gras and oysters and champagne, and then a business meeting for lunch the next day with 4 people. And those are just different experiences. So we like the menu to be able to translate that. It's not just a one-shot thing. If this is just your birthday restaurant, we have completely failed because that wasn't the intended goal. And there's nothing wrong with birthday restaurants or anniversary restaurants. That's fantastic. I have 230 seats here with 150 employees. I need more than birthdays. Need more than birthdays to keep that going and to take care of my staff and pay the rent. Kierland's not the least expensive space in town, but it is beautiful and we love it, and we hope to be here for another 23. So
yes. I love it. Real quick, I want to revert back to, so just to clarify, so when this was built here, was this the only thing? Because now, I mean, we're surrounded by shops, we're surrounded by other restaurants. So, like, was this the only thing that was
when
here?
We built this? Morton's, P.F. Chang's, and Cheesecake had just opened.
Okay.
So that right on Scottsdale frontage were the first restaurants that opened here. A few of the shops had started to open. The condos that are across the street and everything over there was a dirt lot, parking lot that eventually they went underground and built that.
Okay.
The buildings just south of us also, that was a parking lot in the very beginning. I don't argue with it, but we constantly question, did North open right before us or did we open? And it was within a couple of weeks.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And so that was one of Sam's first restaurants in Phoenix. I think he came out of Tucson, maybe had Bloom first and then North. So another, kind of obviously big name in Phoenix restaurateur, came out of this space,
and that was the first North, I imagine.
That is correct.
Yeah. And I mean, no disrespect meant to North on the side of the Cornerstone. Maybe we have 2 Cornerstones there, and then P.F. Chang's, Morton's. It's a whole group of you guys, but I think just the fact that this is the most central located in Kierland, it's always had a special perception for me. I'm curious. You mentioned the chairs have been around since the beginning. The decor has, I believe you said, basically remained the same. Have there been evolutions over time to hit the point where, as you mentioned, you're trying to check all these boxes of, maybe it's a happy hour, maybe it's oysters, maybe it's a business luncheon?
Design wise, like that bread station over there, that's about 1.5 years old. Okay. We wanted it for about 20 years and finally, found the moment. It always seemed like the wrong timing to invest in something like that, which is an expense and, also making it more functional for the team. Same with our outside patio. We have some new space out there just for service, just to take care of that front patio. And we built this back patio probably about 10 years ago, trying to have private parties, which is fantastic. We want private parties. That's a little difficult. I always joke about if I ever opened another restaurant, and again, this never really happens that way because you always end up doing it, but I would not have a patio. They sound great here, right? Like that patio is gorgeous.
Yeah.
But there's legitimately 4 to 5 months out of the year that it's completely unseatable, whether it's the middle of summer or it has literally rained every Christmas and every New Year's for the last 20 years of my life in this town. and we won't have rain for 120 days. And then it rains on the busiest day of the week that you're filling that patio. There's upkeep on it. You spend money on propane to heat it. You spend money on misters in the summer to cool it down. And those help a little bit, but they're just literally 4 or 5 months out of the year that they are just
interesting.
You cannot seat them. And with all the other headaches involved, like I would rather have an enclosed patio that you could open up, even just slide open doors where you've got that outside feeling, but then you can shut that off. And I think that any restaurateur in town would agree. And I know there's always lists in town, like the best patios in Arizona, because when our weather's great, it's great. But when it's not, you lose those seats. Yeah. Now, part of that is acceptable because when it's July here, our customers are gone anyways, right? I mean, we're a town, the Phoenix greater area, we live and die by tourism. If I've joked a million times about this, that if I was only serving locals, my restaurants would be half the size there.
Sure.
We just, it's a big town. Most people don't travel more than 5-10 miles to eat. And especially over the years, like you said, in the last 30 years specifically, this town has grown so immensely on not only the city, but our culinary scene, right? I mean, the some local, some from out of state, just our levels have grown. And some of that is strictly based off of like delivery. Right in the mid '90s, when I worked for Christopher, I'd have to drive to Sky Harbor to pick up European fish, and they would just throw it on the dock.
Yeah.
And if you weren't there, I mean, you're just sitting out in the sun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they didn't have refrigeration or anything. They have all that now, the infrastructure now. I can call, one of 10 companies and have fish flown from pretty much anywhere on the planet tomorrow. You're going to pay for that.
Sure.
But the ability to have product, I think, has changed this town quite a bit on top of things that we're locally producing and growing. That infrastructure has grown. So that has fueled the growth of restaurants as much or more than the people dining or expectations, is just the infrastructure that we have to get the product that we want.
Is that just something that the restaurant industry has experienced in general, or is that more the growth of Phoenix specifically? Because like New York, it was already there. The infrastructure's been there.
Correct. And I think it's more of the infrastructure being built, because it's got to be needed. Before it can happen. So it's kind of that chicken egg thing a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Horse cart, where New York already had all that going on. These major metropolitan cities already had avenues of food production, even in farms from, chickens out of Pennsylvania, New Jersey with their produce, coming into the city, like they had access to it. Our access to those products, it's much longer distance. And less of it being grown here in Arizona. So once you start growing all those products and you're able to bring it in, even the growth of Vegas has grown a ton, bringing product from there, because that's coming out of LA and then coming down to us. So it's a little bit of both happening at the same time. So, and I think every time a new restaurant comes or we elevate kick up our food a couple of notches and, that level of sophistication happens, then we drive those purveyors to get that product to us, and then they figure it out. So it kind of goes back and forth, little
Sure.
seesaw.
So you spoke a little bit to the versatility of the menu here at Zinc. We're going to take a quick break real quick and get a message in, and then I kind of want to go into some of the specific dishes and some of the ideology behind them. So
Absolutely.
Get that message in. A real quick reminder, head over to atasteofaz.com and subscribe to our email newsletter. Also, subscribe to A Taste of AZ magazine and get it shipped right to your door. Now let's get back into today's episode. Okay, so as mentioned before the break, I kind of want to dig into the menu specifically here at Zinc. Give me kind of an idea how it's broken down and maybe some of the specific food items that you designed to fit into some of those categories that you referenced earlier, whether it is a big celebration or a business dinner or something a little more casual.
So, the menu here is really, I'd say 60 to 70% focused on very traditional French cuisine. I wouldn't say necessarily bistro specific, but you could call it that. I think there's some kind of the new term, which would be neo bistro, involved in the menu and always kind of has been. And I say that because there are things on the menu that we've never changed. Onion soup, pate, our omelet, mac and cheese, our flat iron steak, which is our steak frit here at the restaurant that's been on the menu since day one. When we opened, flat iron steak wasn't really a thing. I picked it because I loved it, but also because it was cost effective. And that is, to me, kind of the bistro aesthetic, is that it's something that's not wildly expensive, but it is a great value, but also can feed you, right? It's a good portion. And it's a reason it's a classic French dish. I mean, steak frites on most menus, and you'll see hanger steak, you'll see, filet, multiple different cuts, but I love the flat iron, and in France it's called paleron de boeuf, and you typically see it braised because it's a shoulder cut, so it can be tough. But we've used the same purveyor here in town. That beef comes from Arizona.
Oh,
and
wow.
we use a prime version of it, and I think it's one of the best eating steaks out there. We also marinate it for 24 hours in rosemary and garlic before we char it, and it just gives a real unique, specific flavor to it. I still put that steak up against just about any steak, not only in this town but anywhere. Just again, the resiliency of it, the how closely it resembles that look and taste that we're going for, but also that aesthetic for cost and price. So our menu is always focused around staples like that: chocolate souffle, creme brulee, beignets. And then we've always had 30% of the menu that's evolving constantly. And I think the dinner menu probably evolves the most throughout the year. Some of it's seasonal, some of it's me scratching an itch, right? Like I really want to try this dish. With our time that we've had, being open for 23 years, we also run into things that we want to change that we can't change.
Because people want them so much.
This is the pitchfork effect, right? Yeah, they're riding in the streets that the scallop changed. And we're always trying to come up with creative ways to like even the scallop this year I think it was on the menu for about 7 years. I took it off, changed it, brought it back. And then when I went to take it off again, we had a lot of complaints. And so I basically put the starch that goes on that dish as a side dish. So you technically could still eat it the way that you would liked it and been ordering it for years and years and years, but I still changed the actual dish on the menu just because at some point I've got to be able to do a little creative. I think that we have a lot of other venues though. We have run fish as a feature 7 days a week in this restaurant since we opened, and that is a daily change. That's a chalkboard item. For the first probably 16 or 17 years, Friday was European fish night. So, because typically, if you want to get turbo from France or something like that, you're ordering that on Monday. It's coming out of Paris on Wednesday. We get it Thursday, and then we sell it on Friday, Saturday. That's the basics. You can get it a little more frequently now, but for cost effectiveness, that's kind of the map. So we ran European fish every Friday for 16 years. So that's a creative outlet that is built in. A lot of that, some of that is directed from me. Some of that is also directed from my cooks, not just my chefs, but my cooks. My chefs have to okay it and approve it, but my cooks are encouraged to, if you've got an idea, you went out to eat somewhere and you really love this tomato-based sauce and you want to try it and you want to infuse it with uni and truffle or whatever it is, bring it to us. We'll talk about it. We'll order the product and we'll run your dish as a feature any day of the week. We want to encourage our cooks to get involved like that, and with the predicate that if you make something and it sucks, we're not going to serve it. Sorry. So
are you ready for this criticism?
Yeah. That's how you learn, right? You have to fail quickly, is what we call it, right? There's nothing wrong with failing. You just have to recover real fast. Don't take it personally. So that's a great creative venue for us beyond just my normal. Typically 3 times a year we'll do changes. If there's a change beyond that, that's because a product has gone out or something like that. But we'll do a change end of season, going into summer, shrink the menu a little bit, shorter staff, less customers, and different flavors coming in. Our spring started a couple of weeks ago here in Phoenix, right?
Yeah.
Unlike the rest of the country, we're getting ramps and all the cool spring stuff already. But and then typically as we go into fall, we'll make a change, and then we make a change usually in January. Just post kind of the Christmas season. So those are our 3, and we do that at most of the restaurants. That's kind of the evolution.
Is there a particular season that you like the ingredients from?
That's a hard one. I think a lot of chefs, and myself included, would pick spring as one of the big ones. I think some of that is maybe more of a Midwest coastal mentality. And I say that because it's freezing and you've been hibernating all winter, and maybe you're tired of potatoes and truffles, but how can you be tired of potatoes and truffles, right? So, yes, I think spring is always kind of looked forward to. We have an eternal kind of spring here. A lot of the things that is going on with our environment and our weather, it lends itself to that type of food anyway. So I think fall then is probably my favorite, specifically for the same reason as somebody on the East Coast might really love spring. Fall is when we're finally getting cold, right? We've just blasted through summer. It's been hot. Everybody's coming back. We're rested. We're ready to really step up our game and get ready for season here. And so not just from food product, but seasonality, I think is part of that.
Sure. Yeah. I
And our
imagine
menus grow, right?
I imagine running multiple restaurants. By the time summer's coming to an end, you're quite ready for fall to hit.
100%. And those weeks between the beginning of September and the middle of October is when I'm doing all the menu changes. Probably my hardest 6 to 8 weeks of the year, just because it doing menu changes is difficult. Because it's not, like I said earlier, it's not just me scribbling down on a piece of paper what I want to make. It has to translate through to my staff. They need to be trained on it, not only back of the house so they can order it properly, butch it properly, create it, plate it in a timely manner, but also be able to translate that to my servers who can then sell that to a customer. And we're really big on staff training. We educate. I love a confident server when I go out to eat. A confident server that knows what they're talking about and can take me on a journey, and I don't even have to look at the menu. That's my ultimate dining experience, right? If they know, I'm not the guy that goes, "Hey, I'm a chef, by the way," but again, I think it can get close to at least being a foodie just by the way I'm looking at the menu and what I'm asking questions on. And if I feel like they know what they're talking about, they can recognize that, and they're going to take me on my journey. That's what I want them to do to every customer in the building.
Yeah,
right. Really give them that experience. And I think it's really nice when you can let that happen. And then the dishes do come out and you are surprised, shocked, elated that happened. Like, that's a dining experience. That's like where you walk out going, wow, I had totally no expectations. And I got totally turned around. That is mind blowing. And that's what we look for.
I like that.
You recently won an award here in Phoenix. I'm going to force you to kind of brag about yourself a little bit. What was that award and what was that experience like?
Well, it's funny because I won the award, but I wasn't there to get the award, unfortunately. But it was the Food Pioneer Award, and it was fantastic, I think, for a number of reasons. One, recognition is great, right? I mean, to anybody, it doesn't matter how humble you are. I feel like I'm fairly humble in the food world, as long as I get to kind of cook the food I want, and continue to evolve that way. I also enjoy training and maintaining a team. Like I like that aspect of the food, and that is number two. So I think that's what I'll continue to do throughout the rest of my career, and being recognized for doing that for the last 30 years in the Valley. Even prior to having my own restaurants, I worked with some of the best in town, and continue to be friends with them. But having the award passed on to me from Mark Tarbell, who's a good friend that I've known since the early 90s, is really, really cool. When I found out about the award, I had already booked myself to work up at a private fishing island up in Sitka, Alaska, which is this great experience that I've done 3 or 4 times during the summer. And I go up and I cook for a few days, and then I get to fish for a few days. And it's a really beautiful experience. And Sitka it's one of my favorite places on the planet, and definitely my girlfriend's favorite place on the planet. Any opportunity we have to do it, she's like, let's go. And it's just really, really fantastic. But so I was already booked and committed to doing that because they have guests that have signed on to be there while I'm cooking. It's not something I could just like blow off. So we pre-taped the award here at the restaurant, actually, that they aired. And I tried to tape it like it was live, like I was coming into you from Sitka, Alaska at the Talon Lodge in Sitka, Alaska, right? I knew that there'd be a few people in the crowd, so I was like, "Hey, how you doing, Brian?" So we faked it a little bit, but so I heard it was awesome.
Yeah. I remember. I watched it. I was there. I saw it live.
Yeah, it was fun. We tried to make the best of it, but it was really exciting to get that, and I'm excited this year because I'm going to be passing that award on to the next.
Yeah,
very exciting.
And I can't tell you who that is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And as
April
part of
17th, I think, as the awards. If you guys can still get
that, might as well be 2026 right now. My calendar is crazy. I know what's going on the next. I'm like a mouse, right? I know the next 24, and I remember the last 24, and that's about it, right?
Well, and as part of your pioneering efforts, the legacy lives on now with the 3rd opening of the Mission.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I think it was probably about 7 or 8 years ago, Joe Johnson approached us and has been a friend and kind of a culinary icon in and of himself in town, and especially obviously Gilbert. And he comes up here to Zinc often, and so we chat all the time. And he approached us about opening a mission out there, and we were gung ho. We wanted to, and timing, circumstance, everything else, and that's a whole 2-hour conversation there. It just really didn't work out for us, and some of it with the untimely passing of my partner, some COVID, some other business things going on. And so this last probably year or so, we've kind of gotten ourselves back into a position where we're like, all right, let's move this ball forward. I've got a few other concepts I want to open. I'm 55. I think I've got another 10, 15 left in me. So trying to drive now, where we kind of went into a self stasis for a few years. So Joe called us about 9 months ago and said, hey, there's a space opening up again. So the opportunity came back. And that was really exciting for us. We wanted to be there. Joe wanted us out there. We went and looked at the space. We worked out the details, and we signed on, I think it was like maybe January 1st of this year to open out there. So we're in construction phase right now, looking to open. We say September. It's probably October, November. Yeah. But we'd love to say it's September, but it never goes as fast as you'd like. So we're really excited. And it's going to be same menu as Mission, Kierland, and Old Town, with the looks and vibes closer to Old Town. The Kierland location is a little bit lighter, a little more like maybe Mexico City tropical, where I think Old Town always reminds me of like a kind of an old Spanish pirate movie or something, right? A little darker, and we love both of them. And it's funny, I have guests that are only had been to Old Town that come to Kierland like, oh, I like Old Town better, and then I have guests that have only been to Kierland that go to Old Town. They're like, it's so dark down there. We like the light and airy. So it's all
a war between
it's
the
a
two,
totally
yeah.
right. And two legitimate people that dine at both would absolutely have totally differing opinions on which one they like better, and they both say that the food tastes different at the other one, which is
of course
not true. right. And we knew that by experience. Even one of my business partners would always come up to Kierland and say that the salsa tastes different here. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And so I would bring salsa from Old Town and put it up here, and he'd taste and go, this tastes different. I'm like, I took that from there this morning. It's not. And it just goes to show what environment does to your palate, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously having a fish taco on the beach is going to be a different experience. It just, the smell of the ocean, environment is a huge impact. And that's part of creating the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
It does have an impact. Having an onion soup in a basement is just not going to give you the same feeling as sitting out on our patio here. It just has that vibe.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that. Much work to be done, I'm sure. But like that ham hock tostada is one of my favorite Mexican bites that I've had, and I imagine that's going to be making it on the menu over there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And honestly, we did not touch the Mission menu until about 3 months ago. Since COVID. Okay. So for multiple reasons. One is that our menu shrunk down because of COVID. And part of that was that we went down to a single page of a synthetic paper that we could maintain and clean, where we didn't have the open, 6-page menu anymore. So I didn't have any room to add anything. And Mission menu definitively has those dishes that are pitchfork dishes, right? There's just some stuff that there's just no way that's changing or coming off. Even when the expense goes crazy, we're like, okay, do I lower the portion of the rock shrimp on the almejas and add more of this and change the price? We're constantly trying to manipulate to keep dishes on, even though scallops, for one, this season, like the most expensive I've ever seen.
Wow.
Scallops. Eggs are nothing compared to scallops on our side.
Wow.
But people still want them.
They still want them.
Yeah,
and I can raise the price to whatever, and I'm not doing it intentionally. I mean, we do some maths on our on our pricing. In fact, a lot of maths to try to be right in line where we need to be, but also not above necessity. But this year, finally, we went back dinner only to the larger menus at Mission. And so in January, or actually I did it right before Christmas. My cooks really love that. Added 10 new items on. The timing
Christmas,
just,
guys.
it had to happen. I'm like, I know this is the worst 15 days before Christmas through New Year's, guys, but it's going to have to hammer it down, which is difficult. And this is part of our learning curve, doing it at 2 restaurants. And keeping them the same and consistency. And that'll be also kind of our learning curve for Gilbert, because that might as well be in a different city. I mean, other than it is in a different city, but you know what I mean, in a different state, right? Something that's further away, because it's a 30 to 45-minute drive,
Mm-hmm.
and an hour if you pick the worst times.
Yeah.
So it's not like now where in 15 minutes I can go to Old Town. Oh, we need tortillas or whatever it is. I live up and down Scottsdale Road right now, and it's super comfortable. This is going to be way out of my comfort zone. So we finally got to evolve some menu items there, and I'm super, super happy with all of them. I'm sure some won't make it through the summer, but they'll be back in the fall. So really, really stoked for that menu change.
And as we kind of discuss the next phase of your endeavors, there was a secret teased on the Zinc Bistro Instagram. I've got to ask, what is that secret?
So, and this is the thing we were talking about earlier about, letting the business kind of tell you a little bit what to do or what not to do, and listening, because it can tell you and you don't listen, right? I was here probably 3 months ago, and it was like 8 a.m. I'm just typically not here that early in the morning. I have no staff here. My cooks usually show up around 9. My managers are here at 10. We open at 11. We're open 7 days a week. The only day we close is Super Bowl Sunday for dinner because it's the slowest night of the year. So all the restaurants, that's the only day we close. Otherwise, we're open 24/7 beyond that. And I had a meeting, and I was standing out in the bar at Zinc, and there were just people walking by. I mean, lots of people. And I'm like, where are these people coming from? What are they doing here? And I realized that the whole area has grown up. There's so much more people living here, between Optima and the condos, and they're just continuing to grow this whole area. I think before '08, I think everything was going north of the 101. You saw a lot of stuff up in Troon and way up there. And when that kind of happened and slowed all that down, slowed City North down and everything else, it seemed like that whole area just kind of inverted itself back towards this direction. Now you've seen all that infrastructure getting kind of pumped into this area. Well, there's no parks around here. So everybody goes and walks between the Quarter and Kierland, and they walk their dogs, and they go out and they leave the Westin and they go on walks, and they just walk back and forth in the morning. Nothing's open.
Yeah.
And I'm like, these people need coffee, and they need pastries, and they need a breakfast sandwich. And, we never really technically ever wanted to open for breakfast. I'm not calling it breakfast per se, but we're calling it Le Petit Zinc Cafe. So it's just, again, some cool coffee drinks, some real basic food items. Again, croissants, pain au chocolat, kind of the typical. And then a few things that we've kind of invented on our own using laminated doughs, different croissants, things like that. We've got a BEC, our Zinc BEC, which is our bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich that's pretty lights out. Gruyere, really good smoked bacon, our kind of special like Big Mac sauce. It's killer. With a sunny side up egg on it. And then we're doing a œuf en cocotte, like a coddled egg on pomme puree with chives and mouillettes, which are basically bread fingers. Soldiers in England, they would call it. It's what you dip into your coddled egg. And we've got some great cookies, and the black sesame latte is my new favorite drink in the morning. You just take black sesame puree, some orange peel, and a little bit of local honey. Buzz that together. You can have that just over ice or warm, or you can put a shot of espresso in there, and it's double good. But again, small menu, we're letting it tell us what it wants, right? So we started 3 weeks ago with not telling anybody and just open. We made dog biscuits because everybody's walking their dogs. Sure. We figured we bribe the dogs. We'll get them in here to drink coffee. Right.
Them out, yeah.
And we've got people coming back for biscuits. Now we're going to start jarring those and selling those. So let it tell us what they want.
Yeah.
And we were doing to go only. Well, the next weekend, everybody wanted to sit on the patio and have coffee in a cup or a glass and not in a to-go cup. So we evolved to in-house dining, and then everybody wanted a drink. So we've also opened the bar now. And finally, we said, okay, now we can announce this, and now we can let everybody know that this is happening, this is a thing, and we'll see how it goes. I don't know if it translates through summer with the heat, but it's kind of us testing it out, probably more likely for a full push next fall. But just a nice, quick little cafe experience, which is very Parisian, right? I mean, sitting on a cafe in the morning, having an espresso and a pain au chocolat is probably like one of my top 5 things to do on the planet. So, so we're super excited about it. That's
on
the
my
secret.
list now.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely. Maybe a morning business meeting or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm down.
Absolutely.
Well, Chef, you've been gracious with your time. It's been buzzing the whole time we've been here, but I think pretty soon it's going to really start ramping up. So we will get out of here, but thank you so much for chatting with us, giving us the breakdown of your history and kind of what's coming next. And I'm sure we'll touch base with you in a year from now and see how things are going then.
One more secret.
Oh, yes.
And this is not definitive because I'm not positive on the space yet. But I'm working on what I'm calling Carter's Dash. And this is a much more casual concept, pastry, coffee, etc. in the morning, salads, pizza, sandwiches at lunch, rotisserie chicken, and Roman pizza for dinner. I love Roman style pizza, the El Taglio that you cut with scissors, and I'm not seeing it around town anyways, or anywhere that I can get it. I was obviously just at the pizza convention yesterday, looking at some pieces of equipment, and I had some great Roman pizza there. I think it's become my favorite. I'm definitely a pizza geek. I make them at home. I've got like 5 different versions of sourdough. I've got a raisin and fig ferment. I've got a black tomato ferment, a bunch of fun that I play with on that side. But the Roman style has more venues to change and evolve with your toppings and the ingredients and how you treat it than any other pizza that exists out there. So I'm super excited to see that hopefully come to fruition and check that next box of what's missing in the Valley. Is it a French bistro? Is it a fantastic Italian restaurant? Or is it a Latin restaurant mission? Carter's Dash coming soon.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Yeah.
I was gonna say, what is a Roman, what do you define as a Roman pizza?
So it's a sheet pan pizza, and there's specific pans that are designed. They're rectangular. They have kind of probably a 12 to 14 inch wide version, and then there's about an 8 to 10 inch wide version. The dough is typically a yeast base, so not a sourdough ferment or anything like that. It's a fairly quick dough, probably 36 hours total from start to finish. And it's baked in a deck oven, so it's not wood burning or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's deck oven. You bake the dough, you pull it out. It's closer to a focaccia, but in Rome it's called pizza bianca, and it's not from Chris. But in Rome, so even as a child, you're given like a chunk of pizza bianca to take to school, or pizza rosso, which is the same bread with a little bit of tomato on it.
Yeah.
There have been a few kind of famous bread shops out of Rome that have been opening sandwich places in the U.S. They just opened one in Vegas. I know there's one in Chicago. The chef that kind of like brought this to the forefront is Gabriele Bonci. And I ate at Bonci in Rome 12 years ago on accident, like after a bad travel day, and we were just walking. We walked by this place, and I went in, and it's kind of the sheet pan pizza, deck oven, multitudes of toppings, and then the next signature is the El Taglio. So they take a pair of scissors, and you just tell them how big of a cut you want. They cut that, weigh it, and then they heat it up in the oven and then send it out to you. I went in there, got this slice of pizza, didn't have any clue what it was. It came out of the oven, went out. There's just a little, no tables or anything. Went out and ate it, and it was potatoes with rosemary and Parmesan on it, and it was a life-changing pizza. The most amazing potato, bread, olive oil, rosemary thing with Parmesan that I had ever eaten. And we went back in and just ordered the one with beets and the one with mortadella and the one that had, porchetta on it. Like just the ability to change your toppings up versus what you can do on a round or Neapolitan pizza is ever evolving, and you can cut it open and also turn it into a sandwich. So it's got just the versatility of it. And for a grab and go, take out, take home, I want to get, they have pizza. There's like 7 people selling pizza boxes at the pizza convention, right? Because it's everything. It's not just pizza, it's cheese, it's tomatoes, it's equipment. But I was talking to this company about making me like a 3-foot long box that's just for that half size. So you can, kind of like the Stofers. Like, bring home the stove, but the big style, right?
Yeah.
And be able to order whole pizzas like that and take them home with a cool box.
I'm food
super
delivery
excited.
Driver's worst nightmare
Totally.
right there.
I want the square box back, not this long thing, right? That doesn't fit my car.
Well, that sounds very exciting.
Yeah, that excitement. I was going to say the excitement when you're talking about that. I was like,
I'm super stoked. I just want the opportunity to do it. So. Besides in my house.
Sure.
Which is fun, but...
I think it's lovely, too, that over the course of such a long career where you've done so many different things, that passion still continues to show through is not something that I would consider to be very normal. And sitting down and the few times that we've talked with you and done a podcast before, it really shines through, and it gets us excited because that That is what we care about. We're passionate about food, and for someone to be as skilled as you and take that passion and put it in a delicious food that we can eat, so that we don't have to do the hard work,
Right.
is definitely a dream come true for us. So, is there anything else you wanted to mention before we let you go?
No, I don't think so. Thank you guys for having me on, and thanks for all that you guys do for the Valley and for the food scene. I really appreciate it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Shining a light on folks like yourself to all of the range of other people is something that we are very passionate about ourselves and love to do. So with that, I guess get a copy of our must-visit Arizona restaurants, bars, and more. Subscribe to the magazine and book a reservation at Zinc Bistro.
Awesome.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you
guys.
very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff.
Cheers.